Have you ever felt like the closer you get to someone, the further they pull away? Like every time you step forward with honesty, vulnerability, and an open heart, they vanish. You send a message, it's read, but the reply never comes. You meet their eyes, and for a second, something flickers. Recognition? Fear? A past they thought they had buried? The silence isn't rejection, it's retreat. Not because they hate you, but because you awaken something in them they can't quite name. You see, some people don't run from love. They run from what love reveals. When you come close, it's not just your presence they feel. It's their old wounds, their buried shadows, the echoes of voices they never silenced. They see themselves reflected in you, and it terrifies them, because you're not just a person to them. You're a mirror, a living, breathing mirror of the parts of themselves they've tried so hard to forget. You remind them of their softness, and they were taught that softness is weakness. You remind them of their past, and they've spent their whole life trying to outrun it. To you, it might feel like rejection, but to them, it feels like exposure, vulnerability, loss of control. They don't hate you, they fear what you represent. And that's why every time you come close, they disappear. Not because of who you are, but because of what you awaken in them. What if I told you, he's not afraid of you? He's afraid of the version of himself that starts to resurface when he's around you. The boy who was never held, the man who never healed, the soul that never learned how to feel safe in love. And so he runs, but not from you. He runs from the memory you trigger, the one buried deep beneath his confidence, his silence, his distance. Because sometimes, the most terrifying thing isn't being hurt. It's being seen. And you see right through him. That's what scares him the most. But what exactly does he see when he looks at you? What is the memory, the pain, the story you unknowingly bring back to life? She met him on an ordinary day. Nothing about it felt dramatic at first. But somehow, in the way he listened, in the way he looked at her, she felt seen. He wasn't perfect, but he was present. And that for her meant everything. So she let her guard down. Little by little, she let him in. Not just into her routines, but into her world. Her softness, her scars, her silence. And for a while he stayed. Until one day, he didn't. No explanation, no fight. Just distance. A message left unread. A plan cancelled last minute. A silence that grew louder with every hour. She kept wondering what she had done. Was she too much? Too emocional? Too open? But the truth was, it wasn't about her. Carl Jung once wrote, "The shadow is everything in us that we do not want to be. So we bury it deep, but buried things don't die. They wait. And when someone like her walks in, kind, grounded, real, she doesn't just bring warmth, she brings light. And light reveals." What did she reveal to him? Maybe it was the pain he never spoke about. Maybe it was the guilt he thought he had buried. Maybe it was a memory of a time he felt powerless, and seeing her strength made that memory unbearable. When you are whole, you unconsciously challenge those who are fragmented. Her love didn't harm him. It threatened his illusion, because she didn't fall for the mask. She connected to the man beneath it. And that man had never truly been loved. When someone is used to chaos, peace feels foreign. When someone is used to earning love through pain, receiving it freely feels suspicious. He didn't know how to exist in a love that didn't demand he perform. So he ran. Not out of anger, not out of hatred, out of fear, because the closer he got to her, the more he began to feel things he had locked away. The shadow, as Jung described it, is not always monstrous. Sometimes, it's the child who was never comforted, The teenager who was mocked for crying, the adult who learned that needing someone makes you weak. And now, there she was, sitting across from him, not asking him to fix anything, not asking him to change, just being. And that was enough to unravel him. Because what do you do when someone looks at you with eyes that say, "I see you, and I'm not leaving"? Most people say they want love, but when love arrives without conditions, it forces us to confront everything inside us that still feels unworthy. She didn't just offer him affection, she offered him a mirror. And sometimes, what we see in that mirror is too painful to face. She wasn't too much. She was too honest, too open, too real. And real love doesn't just heal, it exposes. That's why he couldn't stay. Because staying would mean stepping into a version of himself he didn't yet believe he deserved. But why is it that the very thing we crave, to be seen, understood, loved, becomes the thing we fear the most? When someone finally offers it without a mask, why would a man fear the one person who made him feel most alive? Why run from the one thing that finally felt safe? He's not running from you. He's running from himself. That's the truth most people never see. And if you're the one left behind, it feels deeply personal. But often, it has nothing to do with who you are. He doesn't ghost you because you're too intense. He doesn't withdraw because you were too open. He disappears because something inside him feels deeply unsafe when it's seen. Carl Jung described this as repression, the act of pushing thoughts, memories, emotions into the unconscious because they're too painful to confront. But what we repress does not vanish. It hides, it waits, and eventually it finds a way back to the surface, usually through love, because love has a strange way of touching the exact place we buried our deepest wounds. It's not the affection that scares him. It's what your affection awakens. Maybe you thought you were just being kind, but your kindness reminded him of what he never received. Maybe you were just honest, but your honesty echoed a truth he's been avoiding for years. When you reached for him, you weren't too much. You simply touched something too deep. Let me tell you a story. There was a man who grew up with a mother who was emotionally absent. She was there physically, but her love felt cold, conditional, withheld. So he learned early that asking for love led to disappointment, that needing someone meant being hurt. As he grew older, he told himself he didn't need anyone. He built walls, mastered detachment, wore independence like armor. And then he met someone like you, gentle, genuine, warm in ways he had never experienced. You didn't just offer love, you offered consistency, safety, presence. And that, for a man who learned love is unstable, felt like a trap. Not because you were trapping him, but because his body remembered what it was like to rely on someone and be left. So when you reached out, his defense system activated, not consciously. He didn't think, "I'm afraid she'll hurt me, so I'll run." It's deeper than that. It's cellular. It's psychological. It's subconscious. His nervous system registered closeness as danger, not because of you, but because of what closeness meant to him as a child. So he pulled away, not out of cruelty, but out of conditioning. Carl Jung called this a complex, a pattern formed in childhood that repeats itself in adulthood until it's brought to light. The more you loved him, the more he felt the weight of expectations he projected onto you. You never asked him to fix his past, but your love made him realize how much of it was still broken. So instead of stepping in, he stepped back, because his inner child whispered, "It's only a matter of time before she leaves too. Better to leave first than be left again." This is why love can feel like war. For someone who's never known peace, Your consistency felt suspicious. Your presence felt like pressure. Your patience felt like a countdown. He wasn't responding to you. He was reacting to everything before you. And in his mind, he wasn't abandoning something real. He was escaping something dangerous, even if that danger only existed in memory. So yes, he ran, not from the woman in front of him, but from the ghosts behind her. You became a symbol, not of fear, but of feeling. And for someone who's built his identity around numbness, feeling is terrifying, because if he allows himself to feel with you, he has to feel everything he's been avoiding. The loss, the neglect, the longing, the grief. He doesn't hate you. He hates the way you make him remember. And this is the tragedy of trauma and love colliding. When the heart wants to move forward, but the body is stuck in the past. When someone who finally receives unconditional love mistakes it for manipulation. When healing becomes too close to breaking down. You didn't do anything wrong. You just came too close to the wound. And that's why, sometimes, the people with the most love to give are the ones who get left behind first. Because their love isn't casual. It's disarming. It's direct. It demands nothing, yet reveals everything. And not everyone is ready to be seen that clearly. Not everyone can stand in the light without blinking. So the question isn't, why did he leave? The question is, what did he see in you that he still hasn't faced in himself? Carl Jung once wrote, "You are not what has happened to you. You are what you choose to become." But there's another piece of his work, subtler, deeper, that explains the kind of love that doesn't just hurt. It confuses you. It pulls you in and then pushes you away. That piece is called the anima. According to Jung, every man carries within him a hidden feminine side. Not soft in the way society defines it, but symbolic. The anima represents emotion, intuition, vulnerability, and connection. It's not a weakness, it's a doorway. But most men are never taught to walk through it. They're taught to bury it, to be logical, not emotional, to act, not feel, to control, not surrender. So what happens when a woman walks into his life and awakens that very part of him? He doesn't just see you. He sees the anima you reflect, not the real you, but the inner symbol you've activated. This is where the confusion begins. Because he feels drawn to you, but he doesn't know why. He feels seen by you, but it unsettles him. He feels emotion stir inside him, but it doesn't feel safe. You've triggered not just desire, but transformation. And transformation is terrifying. To someone who spent their life avoiding the mirror, you don't walk into his heart. You walk into his unconscious. You don't speak to the man on the outside. You awaken the boy within, who still has questions, fears, and unfinished grief. You become the symbol of everything he's suppressed. And that is powerful. It's why the connection feels magnetic, but also unstable. He's not loving you, at least not yet. He's loving the part of himself he sees through you. You represent the emotion he's longed for, and the chaos he's run from, the tenderness he misses, and the surrender he never learned. Imagine this. A man grows up in a home where control equals love. His mother is strong but dominating. She protects, but she also overwhelms. He learns early that love means losing your voice. That to be close is to be consumed. Now imagine he meets you. You are kind, but not passive. You are gentle, but grounded. You care, but you do not chase. You remind him of closeness, but you do not smother. You offer safety without the need for control. And that disorients him because it doesn't fit his narrative. He's never known love without power, affection without fear. So when you show up and don't demand, Don't manipulate, don't dominate. He doesn't know what to do with it. He feels drawn in, and yet pulled away, because in loving you, he'd have to rewrite the story he's always known. And stories, even painful ones, become familiar, comfortable. You challenge that story just by being yourself. This is the power of anima projection. It creates intense attraction, but also deep inner conflict. It says you, but what he's truly responding to is what you awaken in him. And unless he's aware of this pattern, he'll confuse it with danger. He'll say it's too intense, or too fast, or I'm just not ready. But what he really means is, I see a part of myself through you, and I don't know how to live with it. You are not too much. You are too real. And realness demands awakening. But not everyone is ready to wake up. Sometimes they need to run just to feel safe again. And that's not your failure. That's their fear. So when you're left wondering, what did I do wrong? Remember, you didn't do anything. You were the mirror, the symbol, the light that touched the part of him still buried in shadow. And people don't always thank the light for exposing their darkness. They run from it. The truth is, you didn't enter his heart. You entered a wound, and until that wound is healed, no amount of love can feel safe to him. You didn't trigger pain. You triggered memory. And sometimes, that's harder to face than pain itself. So, here's a quiet question. Have you ever loved someone only to watch them vanish? The moment you stopped performing and simply existed? If that stirred something inside you, you're not alone. You're not broken. You're just awake. And that awakening is the first step toward a love that sees clearly rather than blindly. Because when a man learns to meet his anima without fear, he can finally love a woman without projection. And that love, not based on fantasy, but on wholeness, is the one that lasts. So the real question is, when will he stop fearing what he sees in you and start loving what it helps him become? True love doesn't begin when everything is perfect. It begins when the shadow is finally faced. Carl Jung called it individuation, the lifelong process of integrating the parts of ourselves we've hidden, denied, or rejected. It is not about becoming someone new. It is about becoming whole. And wholeness isn't always beautiful. Sometimes it is painful. It means looking in the mirror and seeing not only your strengths, but also your fears, your rage, your wounds. Real love begins there. Not when someone makes you feel safe by removing all the danger, but when someone looks at you, sees the danger, and stays anyway. It's not about finding someone who won't trigger you. It's about finding someone who helps you see the trigger and still says, I choose to stay. Because love doesn't mean, I'll never hurt you. It means, when I do, I'll take responsibility and grow with you. And that kind of love only becomes possible after individuation. It is the moment when a man no longer blames others for his wounds. He stops running from his past. He stops projecting his fears onto the people who love him. He sees the shadow, and rather than flinch, he listens. One man learned that the hard way. He spent most of his life thinking he was strong because he didn't need anyone. He believed love was weakness, that emotions were distractions. Then he met her. She was soft, but clear, present but never demanding. She didn't chase. She didn't perform. She simply loved. And that terrified him, because she didn't play the role he was used to. She didn't try to fix him. She just held space for him to exist. So he left. Not because she was wrong, but because she was right. Too right. He wasn't ready to be seen. Not like that. Not that fully. Years passed. The same patterns repeated. More women, more silence, more distance. Eventually, he sat in a therapist's office and said, "I don't know why I keep running." And through the work, the difficult, uncomfortable, soul-exposing work, he began to see the truth. It wasn't the women who scared him. It was the mirror they held up. It was the reflection of a boy who never felt enough. He realized he never truly loved anyone. He only chased the illusion of safety. And when someone offered him real love, he didn't trust it, because he didn't trust himself. But something shifted. He began to make peace with his shadow. Not destroy it, not deny it, just recognize it. He learned that being emotionally honest didn't make him weak. It made him real. He learned that needing someone didn't mean he was broken. It meant he was human. And when he finally felt ready, he looked for her, the woman who had seen him before he could see himself, the one he ran from, not because of who she was, but because of what she awakened. But by then, she was gone. Not bitter, not angry, just no longer waiting. Because love doesn't wait forever. It waits for readiness. And if that readiness never comes, it leaves, not as punishment, but as a quiet truth. He wasn't grieving the loss of her. He was grieving the version of himself he could have become if he had chosen to stay. Love never really leaves you. It simply waits for you to be ready. Ready to stop blaming. Ready to stop running. Ready to stop asking others to complete what only you can integrate. Because the real journey is not toward another person. It's toward yourself. And when you've met yourself, fully, completely, without shame, then and only then, can you love someone without losing them or yourself. True love is not the absence of fear. It is the presence of courage. It says, "I see the parts of you that scare me, and I still want to know you. I see the shadow in you, and I still choose to love you." Because love doesn't fix the wound. It invites it to be seen, to be held, to be honored. And that is when everything changes. But here's the part no one tells you. Sometimes, the thing you fear most is not losing the other person. It's losing the version of yourself you could have become if you had dared to love. And that is the moment that breaks you. Not the goodbye, but the what if. So ask yourself, what part of you have you been running from? And are you finally ready to stop? Because real love is still waiting, right where you left it. Maybe you were never too much. Maybe he was just never ready. Maybe the way you loved fully, honestly, without performance, wasn't overwhelming. It was unfamiliar. You weren't too emotional. You were just unfiltered. You weren't too intense. You were just real. And real has a way of shaking the foundation of someone who's only ever known imitation. Look back at the journey you've taken. You've loved. You've lost. You've broken. But you didn't stay broken. You asked the hard questions. You sat in the silence. You listened to the ache in your chest and refused to call it weakness. You learned that not everyone who walks away is meant to stay. But you also learned that their leaving was never a reflection of your worth. You did not lose them. They lost the chance to become who they were meant to be with you. And through it all, you kept your softness. You still offer kindness, still carry tenderness, still believe in depth, even in a world that teaches you to be surface. That is strength. That is transformation. Maybe he didn't hate you. Maybe he simply didn't know how to love someone who wasn't wearing a mask. Maybe your honesty was too loud for his silence. Maybe your stillness was too unfamiliar for his chaos. Maybe the safety you offered felt like surrender in a mind trained to survive. But here's the truth. No one can love deeply until they've met themselves deeply. You cannot pour truth into a container still full of illusion. Carl Jung said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." He didn't leave because it was fate. He left because the part of him that needed healing was still in control. He was not ready to love without projection, to see you without fear, to stay without conditions. And none of that was your responsibility to fix. You didn't fail him. You simply arrived before he was ready to arrive for himself. So if you're here now, still carrying the ache of being misunderstood, let me tell you something. You may have never been told. You were never too much. Your presence was simply a mirror for a man who had not yet met his reflection. Your love was a door, and he was still locked inside his own house. You gave him the map, but he had to choose to walk. You offered him a beginning, but he wasn't ready to leave the ending he had grown used to. And that's okay, because not every love story is meant to be a forever. Some are meant to awaken, to crack something open, to plant a seed, and you were the beginning of something he wasn't ready to finish. So hold your head high, not because he left, but because you stayed true. Not because you were chosen, but because you chose yourself. In the aftermath, you are not defined by the one who could not stay. You are defined by the fact that you continue to love with awareness, and that is rare. So if this touched something inside you, if you felt even one part of this echo in the quiet corners of your own heart, I want to invite you to leave a simple mark, a symbol that says, "I'm here, I'm healing, and I still believe in love," that sees. Just drop a word, a sentence, or simply sit with this, because you are not alone, and your softness was never the problem. It was the invitation, and one day, someone will accept it without fear. Sometimes, your light is what scares them the most, not because it blinds them, but because it reveals everything they've been trying to hide. You walked in carrying nothing but honesty. No games, no masks, just a quiet kind of presence that said, "I'm not here to fix you. I'm just here if you're ready to be seen." And for someone who has spent a lifetime hiding, that can feel like a threat. So they pull away, not because you did something wrong, but because their shadows weren't ready to stand in your light. Do not carry bitterness for the ones who left. Do not let their retreat define your worth. They didn't walk away because you were too bright. They walked away because they didn't yet know how to stand beside a flame without fearing the burn. Love, in its purest form, is not about holding on tightly. It's about offering your hand and letting someone decide if they're ready to walk with you. It's not about demanding to be seen. It's about being brave enough to remain visible even when others look away. And if you can love like that, without expectation, without control, without turning yourself into something smaller just to be accepted, you've already done something most people spend their lives avoiding. You've met your own shadow, and instead of running from it, you chose to keep loving. That is not weakness. That is mastery. That is the moment you stop chasing love and start embodying it. So the next time you wonder why someone couldn't stay, remember this. They weren't rejecting you. They were retreating from the part of themselves that your presence brought forward. They were not afraid of your flaws. They were afraid of your clarity. You became a mirror, and not everyone is ready to see what stares back. But do not dim yourself just to keep others comfortable. Your light is not too much. It's just more than they were ready for. And that's okay, because love is not about who stays. It's about who's ready to stay with truth. So let me ask you something. Have you ever been the light that made someone flinch? Have you ever loved someone so clearly, so deeply, that they could no longer hide from themselves? And if you have, can you forgive them for not being ready? Can you forgive yourself for offering something real to someone who wasn't ready to receive it? Because in the end, they didn't hate you. They simply didn't yet know how to love a fire without being consumed by it. And maybe, just maybe, one day they will. But by then, you'll be too busy shining to wait.